Star Wars 7 by 7 episode 2382. All right, let's get back around to something that we were going to talk about a few days ago, which has to do with Force powers and the High Republic, and the notion that control of the Force itself is at stake in this whole High Republic mega storytelling event. But what exactly could that mean? There are clues from the prequel trilogy that might give us an idea. Punch it. Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7 by 7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy. And thank you so much for joining me for it. And if you happen to be catching the video version of the show, you'll be able to see the paper crowns that Scorekeeper Declan insisted I wear for a while, and I just decided to keep them on for the recording of the broadcast here. So thanks Scorekeeper Declan for having a little fun with the presentation here. And so to recap where we are in the High Republic discussion, we were talking the other day about how the Jedi and the High Republic have been doing fantastically well for a while. We're joining the High Republic era about 50 years or so into this golden age of Jedi activity in the galaxy. We also talked about the foundational question that the writers and creatives involved with this big event asked themselves as part of the development of the whole enterprise, which is what scares the Jedi. And in an earlier episode this week, I suggested that a very reasonable answer could be losing their ability to use the Force. Now, that seems, to my mind, to dovetail nicely with the idea of one of the big stakes of the High Republic era storytelling being control of the Force itself, as was stated in that trailer released during the launch event last Monday. But what would losing control of the Force actually look like? There are a couple of different ways to consider it, and one of the ways that immediately jumped out at me was a conversation that Yoda and Mace Windu have in Attack of the Clones. It happens after they find out that a clone army has been created, and Obi-Wan is going to investigate the situation further. And Yoda, upon finishing the call, says to Mace Windu basically that they were blind if they were unable to see the creation of the clone army. And Mace Windu responds by saying, we should probably warn the Senate that our ability to use the Force has been diminished. And Yoda responds with the idea that only the Sith seem to know that their Force powers are diminished, and if they tell people in the Senate, then their enemies will grow. I think multiply our enemies will is the way he puts it. That conversation strongly suggests that the interplay between the light side and the dark side of the Force is rather dynamic, and as the dark side grows in strength and influence, its ability to cloud the perception of Jedi, of light side Force users, is increased. And that's actually a language that is used, that the dark side clouds everything. That's another way that it is put. And the prequel trilogy is, as you might figure, filled with allusions like this. References to the Force growing dark, or to the dark side gathering around Palpatine, for example, or, as I said, the dark side clouding everything. All of these kinds of references to the dark side as a force, pun intended, that makes it harder for light side Force users to perceive what's going on in the galaxy, what's going on around them. But I would even suggest that it's possible that the dark side has an effect on the physical manifestation of Force powers by light side Force users. And I'm throwing that out there because I feel like, all things being equal, Palpatine and Yoda walking into some sort of arena to battle each other, if Palpatine hadn't been growing in the dark side of the Force, if they were able to just reset somehow with their own particular Force abilities and not have it be affected by one side clouding the other or anything like that, I feel like Yoda has to be the stronger one. And yet, when the dark side is moving the way it is, it seems to give an additional power that the light side is not as able to counter. And indeed, it overwhelmed the Jedi, and it overwhelmed the entire Republic for 19 years, and was still going on even as the rebellion tried to rebuild into the New Republic, and yet the seeds for it were being sown only to spring up another 3 decades later. So, tying that back to the High Republic era storytelling, the notion of control of the Force itself being at stake, knowing that we are going to get a story that takes place near the end of the High Republic era, the Acolyte in specific, where Sith powers are coming into play, that seems to suggest that the end game for the High Republic era is some sort of tipping point, some sort of change in balance where the Jedi have been the guardians of peace and justice for so long, and something is going to tip the scales in the other direction, and we're going to start the slow and inexorable descent to the dark side that is completed in Revenge of the Sith. So that is my take on this whole control of the Force business and what it might mean. I'd love to hear what you think about that. If you think that's on, if you have other ideas, if you want to build upon it, wherever, chime in wherever there's a comment section for this episode, or if you want to go to homebase at sw7x7.com, that would be awesome too. And that is just about going to do it for the show. I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, if you have not rated or reviewed the show on your favorite podcast app, I hope you will take a moment today to consider doing that. It helps more people discover this daily dose of Star Wars joy, and more people be joyful, hopefully, in their lives. So thank you very much for considering it if you haven't yet done it. And if you have, thank you so very much for doing that. I really appreciate it. So it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for this episode, as always. And may the Force be with you, wherever in the world you may be.
Star Wars 7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2020 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.